So as someone who has worked in AAA, I can definitely tell you what I saw on the inside, the stories that you don't get, is why AAA is not as personal as indie games. So let's take a look at this picture real quick, y'all. I got a picture for y'all. So right here, I could tell you the names of all these folks right here, man. These were the people that I worked with closely. We had a very intimate relationship. Like we were so close, dude. And there was people sitting here, here behind me, and I would see them walking down the halls. I would have lunch with them and just be, we would be out in the parking lot talking when leaving work. Like, it was awesome. But the thing is, I did not know, I knew their names and stuff, but I did not know the names of the executives, or I didn't have an intimate, close relationship with any of the executives or head of studio. And I think this is one of the main problems. Of course, one of the key reasons is intimacy. I think that these are type of things that are happening inside of AAA studios. Like, there's literally people you could walk past someone and not know who they are, what their job is, what they do, or and that's part of one reason why AAA games aren't as personal as indie games, is because of this right here. Like, the fact that I didn't know, or I didn't really know the executives of the studio there's a disconnect there. And so those same executives, if you think they have a disconnect with these folks right here who are like, slaving away at the game and making sure that, the assets get done, what do you think that's going on with those executives and gamers? It's the same relationship. It's not really close knit, So yeah, man, like I said, I would chill with these folks, man. They would tell me about cats backflipping in the living room or whatever. Well, maybe not that, but what they had for dinner the other day. If they were sick, they would hit me up, text me and stuff. Like, yeah, like I could call some of these folks. I could not call the execs of this studio. And then that brings me to the second reason, is level of vulnerability. With my team, like my close team, I had a level of vulnerability with them. Even the days where I was just off, or like I wasn't animating at my best, I was like, oh man, I don't want to slow the team down. But they was like, nah, dude, like, you work here for a reason. Like, we love your work. Like, keep going. And it was the same thing, vice versa with them. Like, my teammates would tell me stuff they were going through, and we had that level of vulnerability with each other. I didn't have that level of vulnerability with any of the execs that was working there. And so, there was a disconnect there too. And that's the same thing with the execs and gamers. And then the last thing, the third point, will be transparency. So we could all like be honest with each other if like, hey man, this is not looking good. You should do this to this piece to improve it and stuff like that. But when we would have stand-up meetings, and there would be an exec that comes into that executive or team lead that comes into that stand-up meeting, we would give feedback. Like, I would see all types of employees from different disciplines give feedback, and they just wouldn't, the executives or team leads would not take the feedback. Now, if you think that was happening with the employees, that's definitely happening with the gamers. Now, this was a studio that was working on Infinite Crisis. I don't know if y'all remember that, but it was a MOBA. It was supposed to be like League of Legends or be the DC version of that. And there was a lot of executive decisions made by the team leads and executives that, it just made the game flop. You know what I mean? So, for that reason, you could see why, like, just from those three key points that I said, with the level of intimacy, the level of vulnerability, the level of transparency inside of a AAA studio. And a lot of my friends in this studio, they would tell me about, man, like I did this design or something just for extra aside from outside of work, or after hours, just to try to show some things that can improve the game we're working on. And they just didn't take the feedback. Like, they would never take the feedback. They was like, nah, we're just gonna do this. Nah, we're just gonna do this. And that was happening all the time, y'all. Like, I got to actually witness that and hear stories from my employees, from my colleagues, talk about that. That level of transparency and everything that I'm talking about, it's the same with not only the executives, but corporate in general. So basically, a lot of us got laid off because they had took one of the projects we were working on to corporate, and it was like, oh, corporate hated the game, so we have to lay some of you guys off. Now, that level of transparency, like really having that relationship with corporate. I didn't know who corporate was. I never met corporate, but see, the executives are going to corporate and they're having these conversations. So who knows what was going down in those meetings? But that's also a level of disconnect from the actual employees that are making the games, the developers, y'all. These right here were the developers. There's a difference between the developers and the executives and the stockholders or whatever, shareholders. There's a difference because these are real people, y'all. They were real people that really cared about your games being fun. And I could see it when I worked there. Like, people are so passionate about, like, man, I really think the game can use this, but their feedback was just not being received, y'all. So yeah, man, that layoff, I experienced that layoff. And when that layoff happened, I really felt for my friends. Like, I really felt for a lot of them. Not all of these people were laid off, but a lot of them were. And a lot of these people also just, went off on their own because of just the culture of the studio, and a disconnect with executives and employees. So it was just like, yeah, man, employees. So, I really felt for people. I was single, I didn't have no kids or wife, but a lot of my colleagues, they had either just bought a house or they had kids, a husband or a wife, when I really felt for them, man. And I was like, wow, like, look at this disconnect between corporate. Like, do they know people are going through this? And the reality was that this was in Massachusetts. So there's not a lot of job opportunities or careers in the game industry in that state. So a lot of those people had to pick up and move. And this is one of the things that inspired me to start my own game studio, man, because even before the layoff, I was thinking to myself, like, okay, what's the purpose of this? Like, I know we're trying to build games to make people have, so people can have fun and a great experience. But I was like, what are the deeper purposes for this? Like, deep rooted in my soul, or the executive or corporate soul. Is it to make money? Because if that's so, man, I was like, dude, it's bigger than money for me. You know what I mean? It's bigger than money. It's about the experience. It's about the connection, So that's what, like, when I started, our game was originally called Big Boy, Little Boy, but because of a certain rapper and some legal challenges that we would have faced, I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to risk that. That's a story for another day. But this is one of the reasons, y'all, that I named the game Big Boy, Little Boy when I started out, because it was just that dynamic of executives and employee, parent to child, government to citizen. And as a big boy, whether it be an executive or whatever, being able to abuse that power, when in reality, the little boy or the little fish compared to the big fish is just as important for the whole ecosystem, man. Me and my buddy Jims, we was talking about this one day. We was like, look, in order for a watch to work, you have to have big cogs and you have to have small cogs. If a small cog is missing from that watch, then the watch is not going to function. Both of them are just as important. Just like gamers are important for a game as well. You know what I mean? So and in a way, the small cog can actually be a big cog too. So this is the same thing, man. I was just like, man, I didn't like the energy of that and that disconnect. And so I was just like, man, we got to be liberated from that. So I started Big Boy, Little Boy. I was exactly why I named it that. And the story of the game is still the same. We call it something, we call it Seed now, which you can see at the top here. You can see it's called Seed, but it's still the same story and the same concepts. Nothing's changed with that. The name Seed is actually better for the game for many reasons, in terms of the gameplay. That's why, like, core reasons why AAA games aren't as personal as indie games. The level of intimacy, vulnerability, and transparency with the executives, because like, even it's like now like this picture right here, y'all, like, this is family. Like, we know each other. We know families. We know how many kids or whatever, what's going on in each other's lives. Like, we know each other, y'all. But the thing is, and we're all founders and executives of the project. And that's the difference with indies, is that, you know, they're leaders and they're like family members, you know what I mean? And they all have a say so in the final product. And we believe that the gamers do too, you know? So that's how it should be. There should not be a disconnect between the leaders and the founders of an indie game company or a company. It should be where there is a connect, where people are actually listening. The leaders and team leads and executives and founders are listening to gamers, are listening to feedback from each other, so that we can make the ultimate experience and have that connection, man, while having fun. So that's it, y'all. I'll catch y'all later. Peace, love, and blessings. I'm out.